What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How's everybody doing out there on this Wednesday, October 25th of 2023 for episode 96? This is the pre-Halloween episode, and that actually doesn't mean anything for the show. David, why are you still here?
I was going to say, what does that mean? We got some spooky music next week or something?
Maybe. Actually, you know what? You gave me an idea. I'll probably play like the Monster Mash or something and then get like copywritten.
Yeah, we're going to get taken down.
I mean, does anyone even remember? Like, I was sitting there looking for it, trying to do, because, you know, we use evil Alexa over here. And I asked for like classic Halloween songs. Mm-hmm. And they played like AC/DC and like a bunch of like random like metal songs that are all about the devil. And I'm just like, maybe this is telling me something, like aborted pagan holidays. Like maybe this isn't a good thing. But no, we're right before Halloween. Again, that has nothing to do with anything, but I'm happy everybody's here. David, how are you doing? You're doing good?
I'm doing all right. All right.
We actually have a Speaker of the House, which is a good and a bad thing. Good thing because he seems, you know, Mike Johnson's fairly based. So I'm happy with that. His voting record is, you know, the Liberty score isn't as good as it should be, but strong against the Trump impeachment, doesn't want to send extra money to Ukraine, against abortion, a very good social conservative. So I like that. Maybe we can get something positive done for conservatives there. But so I'm happy we have a speaker. I'm unhappy because now we can spend money again. So it's a double-edged sword. But we'll, you know, congrats to Mike Johnson. Congrats to the Republicans for finally getting their shit together. And, you know, that's a good thing. So before we get jumping in, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5-star Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Go find us on the socials at the Alex Cuesta Show. And last week, we didn't have a guest, but we did have a fun show. We talked about Will Smith and why he's being so cucked and terribly treated by Jada. And I came up with like one of the better theories that Dave was actually shocked with. Blame Scientology. And we had a few other topics that we discussed. So go back. We had a great episode last week. Give it a listen. But this week is a first for us, Dave, on a few levels. So our guest this week is someone that is running for the United States Congress right now out of West Virginia, our first candidate, which is exciting. And our extra first is he was a J6 prisoner, political prisoner, that was unfairly and wrongfully placed in jail for just kind of existing at the Capitol on that day. But he is Derrick Evans. What's going on, Derrick?
Hey, guys. Not much. Thank you guys for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
We're pumped to have you on, you know, and it's always cool when people like you who are doing some things like, you know, if this isn't your first rodeo being a politician, right? You served in the state politics in West Virginia. So, you know, it's pretty cool that someone like you is super accessible. It wasn't very hard to have you on. There's some people I have to go hunting for. You, it was just a, hey, you want to come on? It was like, sure, let's figure out a date. So I always like to give a shout out and appreciation to people like you who are quite literally a person that is of the people, that is willing to talk to people, willing to do cool things. So thank you very much for, you know, being somebody and that's willing to do this type of stuff.
Yeah, man. Well, we need more people in office who are willing to speak with the people. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a job interview where I'm running and saying, hey, I want you to hire me basically to represent you in office. And unfortunately, we get so many people who either going in, they don't look at it that way, or after they get in there, they forget that you know, that they're representing the people, that they work for us at the end of the day. And whether they mean to or not, so many of them get up to the swamp. And I don't mean just the DC swamp. Every state has its own swamp and its own capital. These people get there, and whether it's intentional or unintentional, they allow the swamp to influence them because they're surrounded by that on a regular basis. I've always tried to be accessible to the people of my district when I was representing them, and people across my state, people across the country now, and I'm going to continue to do that even after, you know, I get elected to Congress, because I think that it's important to have the ear for the American people to have my ear, if you will, so that we are still getting the issues that's important to the backbone of the country.
Definitely. And, it's interesting because David over here is going to be one of your constituents, not directly in your district, but part of your state. Mm-hmm. So I think it's pretty cool that you're actually talking on this episode to someone that, obviously you step into the federal level, you're representing all of us, right? Yep. But, the interest of West Virginia is something that David is, it's important to David now being a resident there. So this is actually a cool episode all around. And I am going to ask you, this may put you on the spot a little, but it's fun. It's a podcast.
Do it.
Matt Gaetz famously does not take lobbyist money. It's really hard to not take any sort of big donor money and win a federal election. So I'm not demonizing anybody that does. But are you going to be you intending to be a similar type of congressman where you're going to try not to take lobbyist and big lobbyist money? Because I feel like that's where all the issues come. And again, you served in a state house, so you probably had lobbyists coming at you and things there as well. And it has to be tempting where they're sitting there going, hey, I'm not going to spend $250K on you, but here you go. Here's to your whatever on the side. And we know that type of stuff goes on, right? So how are you going to be in terms of taking funds and things like that?
Well, first of all, Matt Gaetz is an American patriot. I'm a huge fan of Matt Gaetz. And to your point about, David not being in my district, you're not in my district. I don't live in Matt Gaetz's district, but I feel like he represents me and my values. He represents American patriots all across the country. And that's exactly what I intend to do. And we need to send him some help up to D.C. In terms of taking lobbyist money, I haven't taken any lobbyist money when I was in the state house, and I haven't done it so far in this federal race. I'm very proud of the fact that we have over 2,000 donors at this point, and we've raised well over 100,000. I don't know the exact amount. Between $100,000 and $150,000 so far, all from American patriots across the country. I think our average donation is like $50 or something like that. So I'm very proud of that, and I want to continue doing that. We're on pace for this quarter. We're hoping to raise another $250,000 to $300,000 and go over 5,000 donors. These are all grassroots people all across the country. I don't want to answer to any lobbyists or anything like that. I'm answering to the American people, and that's it. The American people only.
And, and that's awesome, but it's also very difficult, right? Because
it's difficult.
For a fact your opponent's going to be getting millions of dollars thrown at them, especially in a federal election. So I want to make a plea to everyone here. If you're an American first person, if you're a patriot, even if you're not in West Virginia, give $5, give $10, give $20. And, instead of sitting there and buying that extra Starbucks coffee that day, even though Starbucks is evil, don't do it. But instead of doing that, send it to a candidate. Even if, I would love for it to be Derrick, but even if it isn't Derrick, do your homework. Find out who's America first. Find out who's someone in that vein. And I agree with what Derrick's saying, that we need more help for Matt Gaetz over there, because there's a small group of people that work with him. The Freedom Caucus is really great over there, and they do a lot of good things, but we need more. We need a lot.
I'd love to touch on that too, Alex, and not just for me. Once again, whether it's me or someone else, I hear so many people who previously would say, look, I can only send $10. It's not going to make a big difference. It really makes a huge difference, because now when I go to bigger donors and I say, hey, we've got 2,000 people who have given to our campaign, that shows a lot of strength in those numbers alone. And so other candidates as well, when you start building up the actual numbers of donors, the bigger donors are going to take that a little bit more serious. Even if you haven't raised millions of dollars, they see that you've got a lot of grassroots support and you're a well-rounded campaign, if you will. And so it makes it a little bit easier to go to those bigger donors when I can say, hey, I've got 2,000 donors or I've got 5,000 donors. It makes it a lot easier.
Now I have a question, because I'm curious. Do you know of other candidates running right now that are American first candidates? Do you guys kind of all talk to each other and know? Because I think it would be something cool, because I know for me personally, I don't know exactly who is a true American first patriot running right now. And I feel like if there was a resource or something out there where someone like me who wouldn't know what to donate for, I don't want to donate to any just regular Republican because they suck for the most part. I want to donate to somebody that I know, even if they win or lose, they're going to try and do it the right way. They're not going to be beholden to the lobbyists. They're going to try and fight for the right things. Do you know if there's any way, or if there's any sort of resource that we can find who's a legitimate, American first patriot that deserves our money?
Well, I don't know if there's any, I guess, single source for that information. It would be nice if there was. As a candidate, you start running across people and different, same endorsements or things like that, and you kind of get to know each other a little bit. I'm still very cautious just from the standpoint of being someone who was, previously elected to the state house. And as you guys had mentioned earlier, got arrested for peacefully protesting a stolen election. And so many of these people who I thought had the courage to stand against the establishment and everything. I watched a lot of these people who I personally knew who just caved to the pressure of these liberals all across the country calling into West Virginia, wanting me removed and everything. So I'm very cautious about that in terms of saying names, because a lot of people can say things, and I'm not saying that they would, but I like to see people in action. And so a lot of these people I have become acquaintances with, but I'm still, I'm going to, kind of wait and test the waters and see what they do when push comes to shove, if you will.
And, when you mentioned that, we have Jenna Ellis now flipping on Donald Trump. We have Lynn Wood already agreeing to do that, yep. Sidney Powell. So it is exactly what you're saying, where we have people who claim to be, strong America first. And Semi in Gemma's defense, she was never super strong America first. She was just representing Donald Trump. But, especially Linwood and Sidney Powell, it's very disappointing to see them. But you know what, though? They put themselves on a terrible spot with some of the things that they were doing, but that's neither here nor there. Maybe we can get into that a little more. But I want to talk about your book. You have a book out, Political Prisoner, The Untold Story of January 6th. So without getting too much into the detail and kind of giving away the whole book, what is part of the untold story that you want to get out there?
Yeah, so I actually wrote this book, most of this while I was in prison for January 6th. It doesn't really get into the prison life at that point, kind of basically leads up to my background, getting into politics, running for office that year, being the first Republican to win my district in 98 years. I won a landslide victory, going to the Capitol, and then kind of the everything that took place between then and going to prison, if you will, the emotional turmoil that it put my family through. People, it's not a long book. I didn't want it to be very long. I wanted it to be short so people could get through it quick. And at the time when I wrote it, you got to remember I was in prison, and there wasn't very many people discussing January 6th at the time. And so it was important for me because I wanted people to see I wanted us to be humanized. At this point, the media, even the conservative media, was silent, but everybody was still calling us domestic terrorists, insurrectionists, all these things. And I wanted people to understand that, look, these are, you can say what you want to about me, but think about my family right now. I mean, with the time of my arrest, I have four children. My oldest is 7 now, but at the time, my oldest was 5 years old, and my oldest is about to be 8. But at the time, my oldest was 5 years old, and so I was home with them when the feds came and raided my home and ripped me away from my family and absolutely traumatized my children. And so I kind of just get into that side of things in the book because I want people to understand the weaponization of government. You hear that in the headlines. You hear January 6th political prisoners in the headlines. I want people to hear the story, and mine is just one of thousands of stories out there from this weaponized government. And I want people to read it and understand that these are actual human beings who are not domestic terrorists, who are not insurrectionists, but they have been put through hell and back, all because of this weaponized government is going after President Trump, and we're caught in the crossfire.
I have to say, for a fact, you guys suck at insurrection.
Yes, 100%.
You guys are awful at insurrection because you guys, that was the worst insurrection I've ever seen in my life. Maybe a few broken windows and people walking nicely into the Capitol and, putting feet up on a desk. Like that was, come on, guys, we gotta get a whole bunch of Ray Epps out there and really rally people going because,
man, you should have heard how the feds were questioning me, man. You would think that, I'm not kidding. When this first happened, when I first got arrested, I was one of the first people arrested, the very first day of January arrest. I don't know if I was the first person arrested or the third. They arrested 3 or 4 people on January 8th. That's the day that I was arrested. And partly because I was an elected official. I was the only elected official at the time to be arrested. And then Coy Griffin was arrested later. I'm still the only elected legislator in the country to be arrested for peacefully protesting a stolen election. But, they were, making these accusations to your point, we were trying to, because I brought up and they said, what did you think was going to happen? And I was like, Well, honestly, I thought I was going to get, maybe a $50 ticket, which I believe is unconstitutional, but I was willing to pay a $50 ticket to exercise my freedom of speech, my natural God-given rights of free speech, much like the Antifa and BLM people. I didn't think anything was going to happen. Man, you should have saw the way they reacted. Like, they could not believe that I tried to compare what I did, which, for the record, anybody who doesn't know, I didn't see any violence or destruction that day. I walked through an open, it's all on video. I walked through an open set of doors. I thanked a police officer for his service. The police officer gives me a friendly fist bump, inviting me into the building. I spent 10 minutes inside the public rotunda area and walked back out. So I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but they were like, you're trying to overthrow the government. And I honestly had to joke at one point. I was like, you guys think I'm Jason Bourne and I'm going to overthrow the government with a cell phone and an American flag? But that's how they acted.
I mean, that's just wild. So how long were you stuck in prison, and were you one of the ones that was put in solitary for a little while?
Yeah, so I did do some solitary. I want to back up just a smidge, though, because
Sure.
the most devastating part of the whole ordeal, partly because where I was arrested so soon, typically the government will gather evidence and then they will bring charges on someone. In January 6th, they're doing it all backwards. They're charging people, then they're gathering evidence, if you
Banana
will.
Republic style.
Yeah, exactly. So I was originally charged with 2 misdemeanors. Then it came back a month later, added 2 more misdemeanors. Then they offered me a verbal plea deal of choose your misdemeanor or drop the other charges. Then they came back after that and said, we're going to withdraw that plea deal. We're hitting you with a 1512 obstruction of official proceeding, which is a 20-year felony. So this was the most devastating emotional part for me. And I talk about it in the book. I get emotional when I really think about it. Got to remember, I've got 4 kids. My oldest is 5 years old. And in that one phone call, I go from, I have an opportunity to take a plea deal and make this go away, to now I'm facing 24 years in prison. And I remember getting the phone call. I didn't even tell my wife first. I just went to the bathroom. My whole family. So I just went to the bathroom. I shut the door and started bawling my eyes out because I was thinking, I'm not even going to be home in time to walk my little girls down the aisle and give them away. That's I've got 2 girls and 2 boys. That's what I'm not going to be able to raise my sons. I mean, this is where my mind was at, and so it was absolutely devastating. To make a long story short, we had an 18-month legal battle. I spent a little time during that time, basically bankrupted my family. Ended up going to prison for 3 months, and I did 8 days of solitary confinement because I refused the COVID vaccine while they held me hostage. So I self-surrendered to prison. They said, are you vaccinated? I said, no. Do you want the vaccine? I said, absolutely not. And they said, well, you got to go to quarantine. I'm like, well, what's quarantine? And they're like, well, we're going to go put you in isolation. I was like, okay. I mean, how long? They're, well, we don't know, because it depended. You got to remember, back then we had those colors. Remember all the color chart?
Yeah.
And so what color was how many days, you were going to be in there for. And so I said, that's fine. And I didn't know they were throwing me in the hole. And so they took me to solitary confinement, put me in a cell all by myself, and sat there for 5 days without even a book, no shower, nothing, just locked it down. So even the prisoners who are in the hole for like breaking the rules in prison, it's like the hole is prison inside of prison. Even those people get out 1 hour a day. They're on what's called 23-1 lockdown.
Yeah.
When you're in isolation for COVID, you're locked down 24 hours a day. So I was locked down 24 hours a day, had no concept of time whatsoever, no books, anything like that. My family had no clue what was going on with me. My wife drops me off at prison and then doesn't hear from me for 10 days because you don't get phone calls or anything like that. She had no clue what was going on. But man, I'm very blessed and fortunate. I was raised in the faith, and I leaned on God during that time. It's the closest I've ever been to God. I have a new outlook on life and a new appreciation for things that most people probably take for granted. And I remember being so thankful that I was on the 3rd floor of this building and crossed the walkway. So out my cell, there's like a little, window top thing I could see. And out across this walkway was like another window. It's covered in bars and wire and everything, because I was not just in a jail cell. I was in like a cage. You couldn't even like stick your pinky finger through the holes of this cage. But I could squint and move to certain areas, and I could look out that window across the walkway. And luckily, I was facing west, so there was a tree and a fire hydrant I could barely see, and I would watch the shadows on the tree and the fire hydrant. And I would ask the guards. Some of the guards were cool and tell what time it was, some wouldn't. And when I would wait for the shadows to get to a very distinct spot in the yard or whatever, and I would say, "Hey, what time is it?" And if they told me, I found an old staple that was in there, and I would like scratch it into the floor. So by the third day or so, I could generally tell what time it was, because the first 3 days it was so hard. You would take a nap. You didn't know if you slept 20 minutes, 3 hours, 2 days. You didn't know.
Jesus.
And that was very, and you didn't know how long he was going to be in there for. But I'm very thankful for the experience. I'm much closer to God, and I have a new outlook on life and a new appreciation for the little things. No sunlight, no breeze, no hearing the birds chirping, no seeing grass, none of those things. And I remember when I first got out and into general population and got to go out on the yard, I was just like, oh, it was just so glorious feeling the sun on your skin and the wind and the green grass. It was just amazing. I'm so appreciative for that now.
And, it's like, it's a blessing that you've come out this way, right? Because that sounds like something that could break a man. Like
Yeah.
you have your faith and you leaned on and you got closer to God. And that just goes to show. And it probably shows why so many people in prison do turn to some sort of religion, whether it is, Christianity, which is strong, or whatever. That's, I feel like, why, because it is something to get you through. And it's good that you're a man of faith and you're able to get through that. And it seems like you've come out on the other end with more resolve and not less. So did going through what you went through as a political prisoner strengthen you and make you want to come out and make more of a difference? Or was this something that you had to come out, think about, and then realize that you want to do?
Oh, no, to be honest with you, they pissed me off from day one, to be honest with you. All they did was fan the flames of liberty, which burn inside of me. And that's what I told them. And I believe my attorney told the judge at sentencing that the tree of liberty has to be watered from time to time, type of thing. And that's how I felt. And, but I want to clarify too, I share this, and I want people to understand that I went through 8 days of solitary confinement, which is torture. But we've had January 6th political prisoners, some of which spent 2 years in solitary. I don't know, honestly, how they have experienced that, because I really don't. It was absolute one of the hardest, most mentally challenging thing. And I played college sports. I've spent days out in the woods by myself, all these things. But this was very challenging from a mental standpoint, to say the least. So God bless them and what they're going through and have went through. But to your point, man, I never had any desire to run for federal office. Okay, so West Virginia, we have citizen legislators. It's a 60-day session. It's a perfect world for me. I was able to be involved politically, which is something I'm passionate about, and help shape my local community. But I was also able to be a husband and a father and little league coach, and all these things that you can't do if you're. And I didn't want my family to be subjected to the nastiness of the national media and the politics of the swamp, if you will. But after they came to my home, literally to my front door, and ripped me away and pulled my family and I into the midst of this swamp, it didn't take long for me to look around and realize that most of our, specifically Republicans, I'm not even talking to Democrats because I never expected them to help us anyways, but it didn't take long to realize that most of our Republicans in D.C. are a bunch of congressional cowards. We have a bunch of spineless jellyback rhinos. And it really just frustrated me. And I thought, this at this point is a self-rescue mission. People are not going to stand up and fight this swamp the way that I'm going to. And, obviously I had to talk it over with my wife after we got out of prison. Look, there was people asking me to run early on. And I was like, guys, I might be in prison for the next 20 years. I don't know what's going on. I can't talk about that right now. But after we found out, what was going on and everything, that's when I kind of really started processing the questions people were asking me. And I waited till I got out and spent a little time with my family, and people kept asking. And so I went to my wife and I said, look, if you don't want me to, I'm not going to. I mean, this is a team effort. Because look, they got drugged through the mud as much as I did. My whole family was doxxed. I mean, these Antifa people had circulated even pictures of my children with the school that my oldest child was going to. People talk about getting death threats online. Like, guys, I still get letters in the mail, death threats on a regular basis. And at the time, I mean, it was, God, I'm not even exaggerating, hundreds a day of letters coming to my house telling me that they're going to come and kill my family and all these things. And so, it was very difficult, obviously. And so my wife, we discussed it, and I told her, hey, let's pray on it and everything. And she finally came to me and said, hey, I think we need to do this. This is an important time in our country's history. I don't want my children to grow up this way, and I don't trust anybody to really take on this issue the way that I know you will. It's going to suck. I don't want to do this, but we have to do this kind of mentality. And so that's when we decided to run. And
that's amazing to have a spouse that's, willing to support you in that. And, at this point, she's probably thinking, we've been through so much already. Let's just, let's keep going. Let's just keep pushing at this point. Let's try and make a difference. So I have two questions, kind of one in one area, one in the other. First, while you were at January 6th, did you have a feeling that there were some leftists there trying to stir some things up? Because it seems like you were on the peaceful side, because people forget January 6th, there were two sides. There was one side where the cops were letting everyone in. There was the other side, which was where the videos come from with all the rioting. I think it's fair to call it a riot. It wasn't an insurrection, but there was a riot occurring. And there's famously videos of Alex Jones driving across with a bullhorn saying, go away, don't do this, don't go in the Capitol. And then there's also videos of actual MAGA Trump supporting people screaming at people, breaking windows, pulling them down, grabbing those people. So it seems like you were on the peaceful side where things were more peaceful, but did you have a feeling at all that there were some leftists in the crowd, your Antifa types, trying to stir things up, or was that just you were way too far away from all that action?
No, I was none at all. Never crossed my mind the entire time. During my case, I actually mapped out where I was at to the West Tunnel, which is what most people have seen. The violence surrounding January 6th. It was almost like almost a 1 mile walk to get there from where I was at, because they had the fence all the way around that day. So you had to walk really far around to get there. I had no clue any of those things were happening. And so, I mean, we had a street preacher over there. It's a church service broke out on our side of the thing. I pushed around a veteran in a wheelchair for part of the day because his wife. I mean, that's what it was on our side of the building. Never once did I think anything along those lines. And it's just, it's really sad what they have twisted all of this into be, and it's all because of their hatred of President Trump.
Yeah, it's wild the way they twisted it. It's crazy the way that they twisted that Trump riled anybody up when they started to go into the building an hour before he wrapped up his speech almost. So it's pretty ridiculous, the whole thing. Now, my second question is, you and your family are receiving all these threats, right? Obviously, it's something that you would typically want to report to some federal agency. With your experience with the feds, would you ever report something like this to the FBI or things like that?
It was a waste of time. They honestly was like, they just brushed it off. They didn't think it was a big deal. And I was like, okay, and it wasn't, I mean, the thing, I guess, so it really, look, I was already one of the most conservative and quote unquote controversial politicians in West Virginia. I probably had the largest following at the time before I got deplatformed at that time. So I was already, I received a lot of hate from the left, but never anything to like my family or anything to that extent. And this is the first time I'd received it at my home. Maybe it was at an event or something, those things would happen. And the media barrage, man, like I'm in small town USA, right? I mean, the population of my town is like, I don't know, 500 people, and we're talking about a 20-mile radius, if you will. I mean, there's probably more cows here than there are people, and and we had, dude, it was like something you'd seen a movie when those 2 days there between January 6th and my arrest. Is the media, and I'm not talking local media, I'm talking CNN. BBC flew a crew in from Britain and came to knock on my house in West Virginia. We're driving out of the driveway, and they're chasing a car with microphones wanting a statement, and my kids are like, what's going on? I'm like, don't worry about it,
I don't even know.
And I did, honestly, and I was like, and what's crazy, man, is so like all that happened. I live streamed the whole thing. That's why I was arrested so quickly on January 6th. I live streamed it from my political page. I didn't think that. Look, I'm not condoning violence by any means. I didn't commit any violence, didn't see it, but like these people stole an election, not only from President Trump, but from the American people. So, I mean, what did they think was going to happen? They think that these people, the American people, are just going to accept that with nothing. And I'm not saying it was okay, but like I understand their frustration. But I live streamed it. I didn't think it was a big deal. And by the time I got home that night, actually, before I even got home on January 6th, I was already on the late night TV shows. Jimmy Fallon and all these people was already like talking about me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even really have Twitter at the time, and like a small account, it wasn't really on there. I was trending on Twitter. My brother was like, dude, not Kobe, what's his Kanye West. My brother, I remember receiving a text. He's like, dude, Kanye West needs to send you a thank you card. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you just knocked him out of trending on Twitter. Remember when Kanye cheated on Kim? Yes. Well, that was right around January 6th. He was trending on Twitter. I knocked Kanye out of trending. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know what's going on. This is crazy. And so when I got home, and then on January 7th, I had a local attorney who was like, "Hey, man, I want to represent you. I think you're fine, but I mean, I've never seen any media like this before, so let's just go ahead and do it just in case. I don't want to knock your door down." I said, "Okay." So I go down, retain him. He reaches out to the feds and says, "Hey, I'm representing this guy. If you want him, he's an elected official. I mean, everybody knows who he is. He still has billboards up with his face on it, for goodness sakes. Like, if you want him, just notify us. He'll be more than happy to come in. He's got kids. He don't want his door kicked in at 5 a.m. And for whatever reason, January 8th, the media had been at my house all day. Media left, which I thought was weird, but I didn't think much of it. And then a couple of media outlets came back. They've been gone for a couple hours. They came back and they started setting up their tripods. And I was on the phone with somebody. I said, "Man, I'm about to get arrested." He's like, which I was paranoid anyways. I'm not going to lie. Because I mean, I've never seen anything like this. And he's like, "Dude, no, you're not. Get serious." I said, "Man, I'm telling you, the media's here again for whatever reason." And I'm not kidding. Like 10 minutes later, the feds rolled up into my house, 10 to 15, 20 deep. I don't know how many it was, probably closer to 15. And sure enough, they Roger Stoned me. They made sure they got their video of them walking me out to arrest me and everything. And so, yeah, it was a interesting time to say the least.
So since you've been out, since you made your, announcement that you're going to run for Congress, what has the reception been from your community after everything you went through, and then nationally with a lot of people? Have people that kind of turned their back on you a little bit over there reached back out to you? Like, what have you found has been your reception to saying, "Hey, I'm now going to go for the federal House"?
Well, my media community, the people who've known me most of my life, man, I'm so blessed and fortunate to live in an area that I do. So before I go into prison, there's like a month between getting sentenced and waiting to self-surrender. And some community members had reached out to my wife. They were going to surprise me, and they put together a big event. We were supposed to ride on fire trucks. It was raining, so they got party buses instead. So my family and I rode on a party bus escorted by fire trucks and local sheriff's departments through multiple towns to this resort where they had a big hog roast and a band and raised money to send me off to prison, if you will. It was absolutely amazing.
You had a going away prison party.
Yeah, going away party like a rock star, man. It was awesome. And so I already knew, like, I knew my local community. Like, if I was to put my name on the ballot locally, like, I wouldn't have to campaign. I mean, I had constituents coming to my house who I didn't even know, who was like, "Hey, I saw your Give Send Go. I wanted to thank you in person for being the first representative I've ever had with a backbone. Here's some money I want to donate to your legal funds." And so I knew I had the support of the local people. I didn't know nationally or like throughout the rest of the state that people maybe didn't know me my entire life. That was something I was a little apprehensive about, especially early on. But man, it has been absolutely amazing and overwhelming of just how much support we've had. And I think a lot of that has to do with, like the Tucker tapes and stuff. People are starting to see the truth and see the reality of what January 6th really was and realize that I am a target of a weaponized government, which I knew that, but it's hard when the media, you can't combat that. I don't have billions of dollars. I mean, literally there's billions of dollars worth of media coverage for the last 3 years of calling us those things. So, nationally, man, look, I've been endorsed by Mike Lindell, Veterans for Trump, Laura Loomer, a bunch of other people that I'm probably forgetting right now. The response has been amazing, and then throughout the district has just been absolutely incredible, man. We haven't spent any money yet. And we're polling at around 45% right now against a 6-year incumbent who's a total rhino. And what we have found is the reason we're polling so well is when people find out who I am. So it dominated the news for a year or so here, but it was 3 years ago. So the people remember the story. They don't necessarily remember my name with the story, the average person. So I was actually in Summers County, West Virginia about 2 weeks ago for an event there. And that's about 3 hours from my home. I've been excited to do this because I can't do this here in my area. Everybody knows who I am. So it's another part of the district where I'm not from there. And so just speaking to people on the street, we're at a Trump tent, so I know it's a Republicans coming up, and I'd ask, where you from, blah, blah, blah. And then I would ask him, I said, "Do you remember the guy who was elected to the House of Delegates in 2020 and went to the Capitol on January 6th? Said, "Oh my God, yes, I can't believe that, blah, blah, blah." And I'd say, "Did you know he's running for Congress?" "Oh my God, are you serious? This is awesome." Seriously, I'm like, guess what? I'm that guy. Like, no way. Can I get a picture with you? This is so incredible. Cool. Yeah, and so that's the response we're getting. So our challenge right now is going to have to raise the money, which we are right now in the process. I mean, we're actually doing very well right now. I'm happy with it. We got to raise the money to make sure that the voters make that distinct connection. And when they hear my name, that's the J6 guy. And if we make that connection, we're going to win this race. That's where we're at.
Yeah, I for what it's worth, I think David would agree. You have the endorsement of this show because I think, you would be a very good candidate. I think you'd be an awesome member of the House. And I would just love to sit there and see you on a committee, outspoken, grilling some douchebag from the left or someone from an agency, because number one, I'd be like, haha, he was on my show. Number two, it would just be awesome to see you doing what you're doing out there. And I think, when you talk to somebody, you can tell, and that's why I love doing video too. When I talk to my guests, you can tell when people are full of shit. I really don't think you are. I think you say what you mean what you say. And when you go up there and you say, hey, I want to work with people like your Matt Gaetz, like your Andy Biggs, like your Chip Roys and things like that you mean it, that you're going to go in there. And I have to say, there's some candidates that came from my area in New York that flip some spots. They're good Republicans, they seem like. And then they go in there, they're voting party lines with Kevin McCarthy. They're voting against Jim Jordan. And it's like on some big bills. And it's like, I mean, I get it. It's difficult to be a staunch Republican and come from New York, right? It's kind of one of those things, like it's hard. But if you're going into that caucus, like, come on, like you have to understand what's going on around the nation. You have to get it. And you can't be so afraid of a Kevin McCarthy and people like that to not do the right thing. So I think you're somebody who's fearless. I think you're somebody who's willing to take 2 years and out if you rub people the wrong way, but you're doing the right thing for 2 years. Like, I think that
yeah, absolutely. I have no desire to go there and waller around and then stay in the swamp, to be honest with you. I absolutely, that sounds disgusting and slimy, and just, I've got kids at home, I'd rather be here with them. But, if President Trump wins, I plan to serve 2 terms. If he don't, we'd have to figure it out from there, But to your point, man, these people, the only thing they can do that they haven't already done to me is kill me. And I'm not saying that as hyperbole. I mean, they've literally, they can't do anything else to me that they haven't already done. And I wouldn't even know it. I'd be dead. So, it would suck, obviously, for my family. I don't want that to happen. I'm not saying that, but I mean, there's nothing to fear at this point, man. They've already done everything they can to me. And so I tell people all the time, look, I'm not going there to make friends. I'm going up there to kick in the damn door and start exposing the corruption that we have in DC. That's what we need right now. And I'd much rather go up there for 2 years and expose this corruption and come home than I would to sit up there for 20 years and lay in bed with people like Kevin McCarthy and all these other rhinos across the swamp area. And so one of the big things for me is, and I've made this promise, this commitment, is when I win this race, I'm not hiring anyone on my staff who's ever served any sort of time or spent any time in D.C. I'm only going to have American patriots, January 6th political prisoners, and American patriots just all across the country are going to be on my staff from top to bottom, and we are going to be the America First MAGA staff from beginning to end. That is something that I'm going to pride myself in because I think that's important too. I think that you need people on your staff who have the same values as you, and I don't believe that there's anyone who's in DC right now, nothing against anyone who's there, who would not at least somewhat have connections already. I don't want any connections to these people. I only want connections to the American people.
David's available, by the way. So if you come on, David's available. And
there we go.
David will come work with you, whatever capacity you need. Listen, he could be your muscle. He'll go break some fingers. But
let's go.
We're part Italian, so it's in his blood. But so I do have a plea with you. When you win, the one thing I am tired of hearing from Republican candidates is, I'm going to go there to get things done. Fuck that. If you're a conservative, you don't want to go add more. Let's take away, not even take away spending, cut the budget. Let's shrink government. The last thing I want to hear is when a Republican or conservative candidate goes, I'm going to go there and I'm going to legislate and get things done. That means there's more money coming out of my pocket. That's all I hear when I hear legislate. So, that is my one plea to you is, when you go there, don't go there to get things done. Go there to be a conservative, shrink the government, try and cut some agencies. And I know that takes time. And I know
all agencies. I'm listen. I'm with you, brother. If it's a 3-letter agency, and including the Department of Education, all these, get rid of them completely. And I hear some people, well, we need to move them out of DC. No, we don't. We need to abolish these people, abolish these agencies, return the power back to the states, back to the local communities, back to you and me and we the people. And there's going to be a couple questions I'm going to ask myself before every single vote, regardless of how good it sounds or the sunshine and rainbows. Does it go against the Constitution? If it goes against the Constitution, I'm not voting for it. And then the second question is, does this give the government more power in any capacity? And if it does, I'm voting no. I don't care if it's sunshine and rainbows for my district or the people in my area or my family or any of those things. We've got to listen. I've experienced it firsthand. We have tyrants right now. We're living in communism, and we're not going to legislate our way out of this battle that we're in right now for the future of this country. The only way we do it is we stop funding these tyrants, kick them out of DC, kick them out of the federal government, and return the power back to the local communities. That's the way we win this thing. And so that's where I stand, and I'm with you 100%.
100%. That's why everyone in the Uniparty was so afraid of the 12 appropriations bills, because that gives a chance to find a line item. And you know what? It will take time to get a lot of these agencies out. No one's going to be able to just zero it out, but it's going to be okay. You don't get the $7 billion in funding that you get last year. You've wasted $3 billion. You get $4 this year, and chip away. And that's the way we do it, which is why no one that in the Uniparty wants to do 12 different appropriations bills, because all the bullshit that they put in for so long is going to get exposed there.
Yeah.
So, Dave, you look at.
I do want to say something real quick. I do think that you're running at the perfect time in American history to run in that kind of message, because just think about it. I mean, 10 years ago, most people with the Israel-Hamas war going on would be perfectly fine with sending almost an unlimited amount of money to Israel. But now you have this kicking off, and there's plenty of people saying, like, look, we already shelled enough to Ukraine. We can't keep doing all this stuff, especially with the economy we're in. And a lot of people would rather just take the time to say, look, none of this is working. We're obviously overregulated. Go and ask someone to start any kind of business. You have to go through as many hoops as possible to earn your own income. You would rather instead you have to work for someone else. So coming in with the message of just getting rid of things in general, it doesn't even have to be certain agencies. Just getting rid of things is just the perfect message at this point for a lot of people who just feel like, hey, look, I want to live in some kind of fashion. It's not even American dream aspect anymore. It's like, I just want to live well in this country.
Absolutely. Look, I don't care. I mean, they might pass some of these things. There's 435 members in the House. They might pass it 434 to 1. I'll be the one that votes no and stands up and says, no, this is ridiculous. I have no problem being that one in those situations. And, as far as Ukraine, look, this might sound rough. I don't really care if Russia turns Ukraine into their garbage dump or their personal parking lot, to be honest with you. We've got our own issues here at home that we need to be worrying about right now. I've been saying this from day one, and it's nothing against any of those people. I mean, look, Americans are very charitable people. We have big hearts, and it's part of our Christian faith and everything. If Zelensky wants to start a GoFundMe account, I'm sure these bleeding hearts would donate their own money to help them out over there. But it's not as a member of Congress, it's not your money to give. That's the money of the American people. Don't steal my money and then tell me that you can spend it better than I can. Leave that in me, and I will determine which charities and which organizations that I want to donate to. And as far as Israel goes, look, I look at it this way. My brother could come to me right now and say, hey, man, look, I need $1 million. And I'd say, look, you're my brother. I'd die for you, man. I don't have $1 million to give you. Well, that's kind of how I feel about Israel. Now, they're like our little brother, and they're asking us for stuff, but it's like, we don't have it. Like, we've already given it to Ukraine, which I disagreed with, for the record. But what do we have to give them? I mean, I'm being serious right now. Look, our own border is being invaded right now. If our military needs to be anywhere, it needs to be on the southern border, treating this like the invasion that it is, and securing our border by any means necessary. And I just got deplatformed from Twitter. My last account was 128,000 in just a couple months of posting on there, and I lost that for saying that on Twitter just about a month or so ago. But I stand by that statement. We've got to secure our own border. We need to worry about our own people. We have our own infrastructure. When we take care of everything here at home, then we can maybe discuss helping other countries. But even then, I wouldn't support it because I think that we need to be doing our own stuff here at home. And if we have everything taken care of, let's return the money back to the American people.
I can 100% agree with that. And, my stance in Ukraine has always been Ukraine should win the war because they're a sovereign nation invaded by another. Outside of that, send people some humanitarian aid. I have no problem with doing that. We should not be sending all those weapons. We should not be doing that. And when it comes to Israel, the difference with Israel and Ukraine is Ukraine needs our weapons. Israel doesn't need our weapons. They just want some aid, which is a big difference. And a lot of people are conflating that. Like, we can't send all this to Israel. Israel, we're sending them supplies for that. Their people in Tel Aviv, which, for the record, is not just Jews. It's Christians. It's Muslims. It's plenty of different people. Israel is extremely diverse. And I'm not opposed to sending humanitarian aid. I don't want boots on the ground. I don't want any of our weapons there. Humanitarian aid is something that I think we can do. Now, I agree with you. We have a bunch of shit to do here. If it's up to me, David's heard me say this, I would pull, I don't know how many troops are around the world right now, about 500,000 troops are everywhere. All of them come home. All of them come home. We sell the bases. We take all of our material home. We sell the bases, so we make some money off of it. We put a ton of people at our border to do what we got to do. But then the biggest threat to anyone is you mess with our allies, all 500,000 are going to be on your doorstep. Yep. No one's going to do anything. No one will do anything if America promises that everyone that just came home will be on your doorstep if you mess with us. So I agree with you.
This illegitimate Biden, and they are illegitimate. I refuse to call them anything but that. The illegitimate Biden regime is wanting a world war right now. Historically, Americans do not change leadership during times of war. And it's my belief that they are putting our troops and equipment and all these things in precarious situations, hoping that there is some sort of quote unquote accident or someone gets trigger happy or something, so that they now have an excuse to actually start World War III. That's my fear. That's because that's the only thing that, I mean, under those circumstances, I guess they could technically cancel the election. And that's the only way I see that the Biden regime staying in power. And the reason I say that is I think it's important for people to understand these people in power right now. And I'm not talking about myself when he arrested me, but you don't go arrest people. And I said you don't go arrest President Trump if you are planning to give up power. Because they now know these gloves are off. And if Trump gets back in office, what do you think he's going to do to these people? And they know that. And so when they arrested President Trump, that was, to me, they were signaling to the world that they are not giving up power without a fight, because their lives are at stake when it comes to that. And these people are evil, and they will do anything out of self-preservation. That's what everybody needs to think about in terms of how this is all going to play out.
And he's gearing up to be a wartime president. In his speech the other day, he made the announcement that we're making the arsenal of democracy and that companies are really starting to ramp up production. And he's trying, which I honestly, not going to lie, Joe Biden, it's a badass quote. I will give him due. Arsenal of democracy sounds like a good metal band name.
It's such a know-nothing phrase, though. Like, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing.
I will say it does sound awesome. He whispered it and he said it terribly, but in just saying it, it does sound badass. But overall, that's what he's basically saying. He's trying to like redo the World War II style where a lot of industries turned into war machines. And he's trying to gear up the American people there for basically saying like, hey, we might need to get a war machine going. And how can I be out? There's a war about to start. I'll see you through this. Now, I think the only value is he sucks worse than any other president we've ever had outside of maybe Woodrow Wilson. So because he's so bad, I think he could start a war with Mexico, Canada, and everyone, and people would still be like, get the hell out of here. You are awful. Because he's just, I don't think a war could save him. Because then you also look and it's like, Kamala's next if anything happens to Joe. And nobody I will take Joe's flabby corpse over Kamala Harris's cackle.
That's the smartest thing he's ever done in his life was when he chose her as VP as an insurance
reason for
basically.
Yes.
But I'll say this, man, I had an interesting conversation with retired Colonel John Mills, awesome person. He's, very in touch with all these things. Yeah. And he said that we've sent so many of our military equipment and ammunition, all these things to Ukraine, that even if we right now started doing what he's talking about in terms of ramping up production to start replacing this equipment and the ammunition, all the supplies, it would take a couple of years just to get the production ramped up to start replacing it. Not a couple of years to replace it. We're talking a couple of years to get everything in place to start replacing it. So I don't think people fully understand just how depleted Joe Biden has left our military right now in terms of our military supplies and such.
Yeah, and I think I heard on the Glenn Beck program that it would take 16 years to just get our missiles back in order for what we've been giving. 16 years that he's now, mind you, not only has he given up most of our missiles, he's also basically depleted our strategic petroleum reserve, which would be absolutely needed if you want to get a war machine going, because what are you going to tap into to initially right away get fuel into all of our jets, all of our aircraft carriers? You're going to get into that. And that's something that Donald Trump built back up big time, because that was already depleted under Obama. He built it back up. Obama just never refilled it. It wasn't depleted. He just never jacked it up. Trump, when we became energy independent, made that a point. Let's get this up, so then we have another thing in our arsenal here where we could say, hey, we're ready to go if anyone messes with us. And that was Trump's big thing. Trump didn't want war. Trump is anti-war, but he's not afraid to go if he needs to.
Absolutely.
So, so I want to jump into another thing with you before, I love the conversation right now. I can go forever with you right now, man. But so give us, and this might be hard, your top 3 issues of that you're running on for Congress right now.
That's easy, man. Inflation, border, and the weaponization of government. I think those are 3 major issues that's affecting Americans all across the country. I speak to people every day, and those are, there's obviously other issues, election integrity, securing our elections, those sorts of things. But I mean, look, without borders, we don't have a country. And so if we don't secure our borders, we're being invaded right now. And it's time to start calling it what it is. We got tens of thousands of military-aged men.
Greg Abbott declared it twice. Greg Abbott declared an invasion twice, and he's the vanguard of where it's coming out.
Absolutely. So we got to secure our border. That's got to. That's a non-starter. And look, inflation right now is just out of control, man. It's unbelievable, and that's why I think is going to be the downfall of Joe Biden, and that's why my fear is that they actually run someone else. I'm still not 100% convinced it's going to be Joe Biden, and the reason I say that is, we know historically that the economy has more influence over voters at the presidential level than anything else. Yep. And they can lie in the media about all these other things that Joe Biden has done, and they can smooth all that out. But what they can't do is they can't lie enough to convince people that the economy was better under Biden than it was Trump. These people, we see it when we go buy milk, bread, eggs, pay rent, interest rates on your cars, your credit cards, your homes, all these things. And so they can't lie their way out of that. And there's going to be, we talk about the silent majority of 2016. I believe that in 2024, there's going to be an even bigger silent majority, and they're going to be even more silent. There's going to be a lot of these people who were previously never Trumpers, or people who didn't vote for him last time because they didn't like him. They weren't necessarily never Trumpers, who would never admit it publicly, but they're going to go in there when it comes time to push that button. They're going to vote with their wallet, because they know that life and the economy and everything was better under President Trump than it was Joe Biden. They're going to push that button for President Trump. So I think the economy and inflation is going to play a much bigger part in the presidential election than anything else. And then last is the weaponization of government.
So I want to go into a little more detail, if you have any. Yeah. With inflation, what would you like to see? What, in terms of the powers that you would have in terms of a voter potentially putting bills on the floor, how would you try to combat inflation at the federal level there?
Well, the easiest way, I'm from an energy producing state. We got to unleash American energy. Like, we've got all this underneath our feet right now: coal, oil, natural gas, all these things. We got to unleash this American energy. It puts people back to work and really lowers when we have coal and all these things that are helping provide electricity, it lowers the cost of electricity, which also in turn makes it cheaper to manufacture things and stuff like that. So I think that unleashing American energy is the first step in terms of saving our economy right now and tackling the inflation.
Are you a supporter of nuclear power?
I am, yeah. I think we need that as well. Absolutely, it needs to be all encompassing. I'm not a fan of these green energy subsidies. Nope. If green energy is so much better, then let them compete on the open, free market, the way that all these other these other things need to do. And so that's the issue right now, is that it's not even close to being as cost effective, but it's backed up. The government's picking winners and losers, which is never a good thing. And so we need to cut all these green subsidies opportunities and say, look, if it's better, then go be better, go compete out there on the free market. But look, I come from the coal fields of West Virginia, and I watched the Obama administration completely decimate my entire region with their war on coal, and there's no words to even describe what that administration done to our economy and to our communities. And it's even worse than people realize, though. Not only did they overregulate these coal businesses coal mines out of business, they actually came down and blew up and took down most of the coal-fired power plants. So we'd actually have to rebuild those if we wanted to start doing that again. Now there's still some met coal. So thermal coal is what they use to burn to make electricity. And then met coal is what they use. It burns at a higher temperature, is what they use to make steel. And so we still have some met coal mines in our area that they use for the steel industry. But if we do have thermal coal, it is shipped overseas to China and Russia and these other countries to burn, for them to burn, because I guess it's okay for the environment if other countries burn it, just as long as it's not coming from
exactly
American.
And when I agree with you with the green subsidy thing, and even when it goes to like the battery power, all the electric stuff, we need to figure out a way to explain to people that it's actually worse for the environment, right? Because when you guys do your coal in West Virginia, it's highly regulated. It is the cleanest burning coal on the planet. The emissions are extremely low. But we know China's building 30 more coal plants because they know that the idiots in the West are going to do this whole green nonsense. We're going to go all battery. We're going to go all electric. And that solar and wind can't possibly power all the stuff we're going to do. We're going to be California with planned blackouts because our grid can't handle it. But they're going to be giving us coal, which is not clean at all. It pollutes 20, 30 times more than we can even imagine because they don't have any regulations there in China and they don't care. So, it's just something that more representatives like you guys need to bring. And it's an issue, right? Because you're going to have a backbone when you get in there. Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert, MTG. But there's so many rhinos that are afraid to say these things, that are afraid to say, hey, the left wants to pollute more. Period.
But you know what needs to happen, though? We need some of these firebrand members of Congress to grab their phone, go live on social media if you need to, and walk right into these other Republicans' offices and say,
podcasts.
Hey, why don't you go ahead and tell the American people right now why you refuse to support these policies? Why are you being a coward right now and not wanting to push this? Or will you commit right now that you'll vote for it if I put forth a bill? Cool, and go to the next one, and put these people on the spot. This is not a time for patty cake politics. We need people who's going to be a little bit in your face. I'm not saying to be rude necessarily, but I mean stop letting these people hide and be congressional cowards and hide behind all these things and leadership and all of this. We right now have got to unleash American energy, and that's just all there is to it. And look. You can't recycle the windmills. You can't recycle the solar panels. They're not reliable. These rare earth minerals, they're not rare earth. They're all over the place, actually. They're just using child slave labor over there to mine this stuff. And have you ever seen a silicone mine, what it looks like? I mean, it's way worse than a coal mine here in West Virginia.
Or the cobalt mines in Africa. Falling into holes that cave in on them all the time, and kids are going in there. But you know what, though? It's happening in Africa, which our EPA is not allowed to develop for the last 30 years. So they're not allowed to have fossil fuels because it would pollute too much. But other places can do it. So, I agree with you completely on all that. And I think we need to put so many people on blast. So the next thing you want to say is the border, right? The border is open. That's your second biggest issue. What would be your way of fixing the border over there?
Well, we need to build the wall, and we need to send in the military and the National Guard, whatever, and literally treat this like the invasion that it is. And I'm sorry, but if we need to shoot some people, I'm sorry. I got kicked off Twitter for it. But look, at any other time in the history of the world, if what was happening on our border right now was happening on any country in the history of the world, they would be met with military force because this is an invasion.
And both Trump and DeSantis agree with you. They both said
and so that's what we've got to do, man. I mean, and look, we got to target the cartels who are and it's not even just invading our border from that standpoint. They are smuggling humans. This is human trafficking,
raping
that
women
is going on right now. The cartel is no longer smuggling drugs. They're smuggling humans, and they're using our government to help do that.
I mean, they've been using the government with Obama Fast and Furious to give them weapons and stuff too. So this isn't new. And, like I mentioned 2 seconds ago, they're raping women consistently. Women are consistently being raped. Children are being used and raped. And, it's a thing where people use it to get political points or points on Twitter, and then it goes away for a while. And, it is a big topic and something that needs to continue to be addressed.
Yeah, and I do got to say, I feel like this point is also linked directly to the point about inflation and economy as well. Yes. Because, look, someone could come illegally across the border, which is still a crime in the first place to do that. So that's still a bad thing. But they can come in and be as good of a person as possible. And that person still needs a place to stay. So they're going to get an apartment or a house or something like that. They still need to buy things. They are another person that needs to be a part of the economy, and that will influence the prices of things, especially with how many people are coming in. So when you have this many people coming into a country, they're just going to make things worse and worse and worse dollar-wise for everyone else in there as well.
Well, look, look, I support people coming here legal, proper way. My wife's a first-generation American. But having said that, we have such a crisis right now. I would put a moratorium on it. There would be no immigration in our country for at least a decade at the bare minimum, so we can get a handle on all this and start stabilizing everything. And so, look, I agree with you. We've got to secure the border. And something else that a lot of people don't discuss that I don't know if a lot of people understand how it works, but like I hear people talking, well, they're voting, and then the other left saying, no, they're not voting. Let's just pretend they're not voting right now, okay? That doesn't matter. What they are doing 100% is the congressional representation of each state that is determined by the census every 10 years. That is determined by the population, not the population of citizens. And so these people are counted in the population, which shapes the electoral college count for each state and the amount of congressional representation you have. West Virginia lost a congressional rep this last census, barely. And had they not counted, and President Trump tried to stop this, just for the record, the courts shut it down, and I think they continued that fight, or I think President Trump would have continued that fight had he won. But we would not have lost a congressional rep had they not counted illegal citizens or illegal people in other parts of the country. And so we just lost a very red district, a red seat here in West Virginia, and Americans now have less of a voice because they're being represented with an extra seat in like California or somewhere now.
And another narrative I want to battle, and I think one with your voice that you can help. There are rhinos out there now touting that Biden has done more at the border than Trump in terms of spending money and stuff. And one of the things that people forget, and it's these exact people that did it, which is why they're touting it, right?
Yep.
Trump was battling his own party the whole entire time. He had Paul Ryan, who absolutely sucked and did not. He was one of the worst uniparty rhinos. Boehner and Ryan sucked and did not, along with McConnell, did not help Trump when they had the majority there. So they weren't giving him all the funding that he wanted to do for the wall. They weren't letting him do a lot of the things. So when I hear a lot of criticism, again, Donald Trump is not perfect. We also all forget, and I mention all the time, Donald Trump is much closer to a Bill Clinton Democrat than a Ronald Reagan Republican, because he was a Bill Clinton Democrat in New York his whole life. As a person, as a policy person, he really hasn't changed much. I think he has some things he's come a little more right to, but for the most part, he's still very much in that mold. So he was getting pushback from so many different directions on the things he was trying to do, and he still kept some of his promises despite that. He's still
and it's always fascinating to me that the left hates him so bad, because he's not that conservative when he comes down to on a lot of the, you know what I mean, like he's
a great pick for them. In reality, he's them for them.
Absolutely. So I mean, I love him. To me, he's the greatest president of my lifetime. I mean, I'd ride or die with President Trump. But for them to act like he is just this, this true, just far right extremist, it's not even simply true. He has common sense. He brings common sense policies that I think most Americans agree with, and I think that's proven by the fact that he's won 2 elections and he stole one from him. But to your point, they fought him every single step of the way that he was in there, and that's why I tell people, not only do we need to get President Trump reelected, we've got to get some people, not just Republicans, because some of them are just as bad. We got to get some fighters who are willing to go in there to Congress and Senate and actually fight for the America First policies that President Trump is trying to put forward, because last time they fought him every step of the way. You need some people who's going to be in there to take some of that off his plate and say, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to fight. Yep. We're going to fight for this for you and for the American people.
Definitely some American first conservatives and some libertarians too, because the libertarians for the most part agree with him, because you have great guys like, Thomas Massey doesn't always agree with Trump, but at least when Thomas Massey explains himself, you understand where he's coming from. Mike Lee's another one, very strong in the Senate, but there are times where he's like, Donald, that wasn't constitutional. And then you read it and you're just like, yeah, Trump, don't do that. Like, you kind of agree with them. When he sat there and he was like, I'm going to do an executive order against California to do this, I was like, please don't, Donald. Please don't. Like, that's not the right thing. But those are the type of people we need in Congress that have principle and will always stand on it. Your Rand Pauls and people, we don't always agree with them. But Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Tom Massey, they are guys that don't change. You look at their voting record, it might not be the most conservative, but it is in line with their libertarian values and their constitutionalist values.
It's constitutional.
And I'm cool with it. And I'm okay with it. I'm not very much a isolationist like they are. I do have a little more, but I can respect it because they're who they are. So I'm cool with that. Now, one thing I do have to ask you, are you going to be paying attention to your Liberty score on Conservative Review all the time?
I don't think I'll have to, because I think that's going to be it's going to be a good score regardless. I'm not going to have to worry about that because that's who I am. I mean,
Byron Donalds, MTG, Boebert, all of 100%. So there's that's what you really want to aim for, that 100%.
I expect to be there as well. And if not, I hope that the American people tar and feather me.
And I want to say it is funny how far the Overton window has shifted from years and years and years of just politics, because like you were just talking about with Trump and how he's a Bill Clinton Democrat, and some of your policies that you're coming in with, these are just normal policies from back in the day. Like these aren't crazy things, but the window has shifted so much to the left, to leftists, that anything that's even center left is considered far right. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, if you say that men are men and women are women, then you're an extremist now. I mean, that's not even saying, like, it's not you're going out and saying that these people should be jailed or they can't pretend to be that. It's just like, no, I'm just telling you a fact that, XX and XY, and that's simple, and now you're an extremist.
Well, Derek, now you have to run on a platform of throwing gays off buildings because all the left supports Palestine in the Middle East now.
They do support
that's cool
that,
now. Now you got to come out and be like, listen, I'm with you guys. Let's toss some gays off towers. Let's do this. Because apparently that's what they're cool with.
Them and the women, man. Them and
stoning
the women.
Let's stone women that cheat on people. Let's do it.
They're out here marching for Palestine. I'm like, you realize that if they win, you can't speak anymore. You're not allowed to march anymore.
You can't show your face. There's a lot of things you can't do if they win with Sharia, and you're basically marching into your own jail cell. No pun intended with you with that.
Absolutely.
But it is wild. And I've said to David, I said to my dad's the one that made us more conservative. We grew up Rush babies. But I've said to him, and I had this debate with him, there have never, ever been Democrats that weren't socialists and communists. I feel like that's been the whole way. And if you look at the history, going back to Tammany Hall, Martin Van Buren, and the things that they used to do to the South and slavery, where they were leftists and that collectivist, and all the things that they've done, what we've seen is a lot of people just moving the ball slowly towards the left and progressive. And the gates got kicked open with the squad coming in, now the Hamas caucus, because they didn't care. They were like, we're going to go further left than anybody, and forced everyone to take their masks off. Where everyone like your Pelosi's and your Harry Reids back then were very cool with Republicans always give us concessions, so let's just move it a little more left. AOC them came in and they were like, nope, we're socialists. And everyone's like, okay, let's just do whatever they want. Because that's
what though? I respect AOC more than I do the Rhinos, because at least she's up front and honest from the get-go and says, this is what I stand for. And the Rhinos say, hey, we're gonna sometimes
we'll do the crocodile tears and vote present. Okay, like she's learning how to be swampy more and more.
We know she's a leftist, though. It's the Rhinos who run in these red districts, pretend to be conservative, and then they turn around and McCarthy, for instance, has like a 50-something% conservative voting record, the Liberty score or whatever, and he was the Speaker of the House.
Also from California. What are we doing putting California conservatives in any sort of power, okay?
Yes.
I would be like, listen, if I ever rose up in the federal government in New York, I want not a single conservative to trust me. I'm a New York conservative, okay? Like, I definitely have had to sit there and pay some leftists off not to shoot me on the ballot box, like quite literally not murder me. And like there's something that comes with being, like, you got to have balls of steel. And don't get me wrong, if I ever get there from New York, I will get assassinated because I will tell these people to kick rocks. You're a lot safer coming from West Virginia because no one, when you get back to your district, they're going to agree with you. So
100%.
So, you won't have to deal with that. It's like, it's so wild. So I want to get on to the last, your big button, hot button issue is the weaponization of government. It makes sense why this is a big topic to you. What would you do to combat the weaponization if you got in there?
Well, one of the first things we got to do is defund the DOJ. I mean, right now, I mean, they're just completely weaponized, and it's so much. I mean, we need to impeach a lot of these judges. Okay, not a lot of people are talking about that either. So I want people to understand, we all hear about the weaponized DOJ, and it is bad. I mean, I've experienced it firsthand. But what I found throughout my own personal journey was that the weaponized court system is probably worse. And the reason I say that is, if you have a weaponized DOJ, but you had a just and honorable court system, the weaponized DOJ could bring all the charges they want to, and you'd still have that veil of protection in the court system. But what we're seeing right now is, number one, they refuse to move the trials out of D.C., for the January 6th trials, for instance. And you can't get a fair trial there at all. I mean, it's so. I'm going to give you guys a perfect example of how corrupt the J6 trials are right now. So I got a buddy, John Strand. He's in prison right now in Florida for January 6th. When he went to his trial, he said that the jury selection day was the most fascinating day. They were lined up around the building, and people were literally crying when they were chosen because they were so excited to be on the jury for January 6th, number one. But the worst part,
they should be kicked out on that off merit because you shouldn't be excited to be a jurist.
100%.
You're not supposed to know about it.
Well, that's why we need the trials moved, because everybody there does know about it, you know, and they're obviously biased.
But Idaho or Montana or something where there's 16 people.
Even honestly, even Baltimore, if they moved it to Baltimore, we would have a shot. I mean, and Baltimore's a blue city, so I mean, we're not asking them to move it to West Virginia or anything like that. Like, literally, just move it to Baltimore. But in the trial, in John Strand's trial, the government presented a picture. It was a thumbnail, basically. It was like a thumbnail of a video, but they just showed the picture of it, okay? And it was a picture, and the government indicated that John was berating police officers in this particular picture. In reality, it was a thumbnail of a video, and if you went up and you pushed play, like just left it up and pushed the play, but you could see the play button. If you went up and pushed play, you would see that John was actually clapping and thanking the police officers. And here's how corrupt the court system is. The judge allowed the government to present that picture and claim that John was berating police officers, and did not allow his attorneys to push the play button to show that it wasn't true. That's just something small that's happening in our court system right now. So I think that judges who are partaking in these things needs to be impeached. I think that they need to be impeached. I think that Chris Wray and all these other people need to be impeached. I think that it is so much deeper than one person or one agency or one thing. I don't know how you actually solve it, to be honest with you. I'm not claiming to know the exact answer, but I know that status quo is not going to do it, and it's going to have to be a scorched earth scenario in order to fix this issue. And I'll quickly say that it's not just the weaponization of government, man. An issue that I wish even the left-wing extremists who hate me would at least listen to me on this issue is our criminal justice system is broken in this country, man. I mean, 100%. When I went to prison, I thought I went in there with an intention. You know, I was a huge fan of. It's going to sound crazy. I was always a huge fan of 60 Days In. I watched that show a lot, and I've always kind of been fascinated with it. And I knew I was only going to be there for a few months. I was never planning to go back, and so I wanted to be involved in politics. So I went in there with a mindset: I want to learn as much as I can, and I'm also going to use this as a mission trip and spread the word of God behind prison walls while I'm there. And I did those things, but I thought I was going to meet a bunch of people who all claimed that they were innocent. And, you know, I didn't meet a single person who claimed that they were innocent. I met a bunch of people who said, just like I did, you know what? I might have done something a little wrong, but they overcharged me and they've over-sentenced me. And now I'm in here for 15 years for something petty. And that's what I found, and that's what I saw. And it's really sad how many people, this is more the libertarian side of me, how many people are going to prison for 10, 15, even 5 years on victimless crimes. That is heartbreaking, what is taking place in our country right now. And that's something I'm very passionate about. And I've always kind of had one foot in that door, if you will, but I didn't really fully understand the extent of just how broken our system really is.
So, David, you can go ahead.
I do want to say this. I feel like people are slowly waking up to a lot of the weaponization of government and just how overbearing government has been, especially over the past couple of years. I mean, really, you had January 6th happen, which, that it was very divisive on whether or not people realized what exactly was going on, especially at the aftermath of it. Yeah. But now people fully getting more and more of the aftermath of the response to COVID, not COVID itself, but the response to COVID. Mm-hmm. Now that they're actually understanding what happened during that time, because we're going to be feeling the effects of that for a long time with them locking down the country and, arresting people for trying to go on a damn beach. Yep. So but now people are finally understanding what exactly happened here, especially if they have kids. Especially if their kids weren't able to go to school and now
with the Zoom and stuff, yeah,
exactly, and now not well adjusted with other kids, or they're having difficulty learning.
And I'll say this: I deal with kids every single day in my day job, and they all tell me that they were gravely affected, for the 2 years that they had to do Zoom calls and not be around friends, and that they say that they feel cheated by what happened to them. Sorry, go ahead.
But this is all just representation of the weaponization of the overbearingness of the government that we have right now. Because not only do they go after specific people like you, but they can go after everyone. They literally showed
going after the former president.
Yeah, they literally showed that they'll go after everyone and anyone, even in groups of people. It doesn't matter. So I'm happy to see people waking up to it, though it does get a bit annoying and a bit frustrating that it's just like, it's right in front of you. Like, there's so many things.
To your point, man, if you're a conservative, you're on a watch list. I mean, I'm 100%. It's not hyperbole.
On there.
It's not joking.
What's crazy?
You are on a watch list.
What's crazy, Derek, is I told David when we started to do this show, 96 episodes ago, and, we started it and I said, I want to interview people. And our first big controversial guest, we had John Ziegler on, and John Ziegler is an awesome dude. He did the documentary video about 9/11 and things like that, and well known. But our first super controversial guy we had on was Billboard Chris. And I said to David, if we do this, we are planting our flag. We are on a list officially. They probably already looked out for us, but now, we are official. Mm-hmm. And there's no going back anymore. They know who we are. We can never get famous, but the government knows who we are. And if shit hits the fan, we're getting taken away.
100%.
Bottom line. And we're both all in. And that's where, and we're both all in with this. We feel that, I said to him, we're not morons. We love politics. We know what we're talking about, and it would be a disservice not to at least get our voices out there and talk to people like yourself. So,
I appreciate what you guys are doing, man. We need more people doing it, and I want people to understand that, people think about January 6th, but you got to remember, parents who spoke out at school board meetings are being targeted by the FBI. Yep. You got the Michigan electors. Yeah. You got so many people. You got pro-life activists. You have the guy who made the memes going to prison now. And so, this is so much
bigger Schroyer from InfoWars for no reason at all.
Yeah. This is so much bigger than the January 6th right now in terms of that. And I say that as a January 6th political prisoner. Mm-hmm. But what I want people to understand is it's the prison wasn't even really the worst part. I'll have to say it was the process is the punishment, if you will, is what we say in the J6 community. So I was completely debanked. I mean, forget getting deplatformed. I lost all my social media accounts, but I mean, debanked, meaning major banks calling the note on my home, and not just mine and other people's, and the note on your vehicle to where you have 30 days to pay it off or lose it. You can't open checking accounts. I can't use most of these services. There's a lot of companies that I can't use, and it's not really them, it's the banks. So Anadot is an alternative to WinRed. I can't use them to fundraise because their bank won't approve me as an underwriter because of January 6th. And then after that, I can't get approved for so many things because of January 6th, but I was finally started flying again a couple months ago as my campaign started ramping up, and found out that not only am I on what they call Quad S, every January 6th political prisoner is on what they call Quad S, which is the highest level of security you can have and still fly on an airplane. And let me just explain to you how crazy this is. So I get to the airport, I hand them so I'm not allowed to check in online. I have to check in person. So I go to check in at the desk in person. They take my ID, punch it in, and 3 or 4 employees come out. Things start shouting out over the thing. We're on high security alert. They have to pick up the phone. They spend 20 minutes on the phone, asking, "Are you traveling with anybody? Do you have all these things?" I'm like, "No." And if I did, I mean, I would just lie to you if I wanted to. I'm not that I'm going to, but somebody could. Well, so then from there, after they finally approve me and they give me my boarding pass and it has the 4 S's, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm quad S." So if you ever see on your boarding pass 4 S's on the bottom right and the top left, that means you're quad S. So then I go to TSA and I get to TSA and I hand it to them. And I'm in a very small airport. They've never seen anything. Like, they've never experienced this before. Mm-hmm. So they're like figuring out what to do. They come over there in front of everybody and read me off this big script. It'd take about 2 minutes, but the gist of it was, you start this process. There's no going back. You can leave now, but once you start, you're going to have to finish the process. Do you wish to continue? I'm like, well, yeah, I want to fly. So I go forward, go through all of their machines, right? Everything, just, some people only have to go through 1 or 2. I had to go through all of them, which is fine. Then they say, step over here. Before we pat you down, we're going to swab your hands. I'm like, okay. So they swab my hands. They put it in this machine to swab for explosives. Then they literally, like, and I've been to prison, so this is the worst pat down I've ever had in my life. He was like, "Are you sure you don't want like a private screening?" I said, "No, man, whatever we're going to do it right here." When I say they touched every square inch of my clothing inside and out and every square inch of my body, every crevice of my body, I'm not kidding. I never had a pat down like this, even in prison. I mean, they were very, very personal. After that, I go over to, they got these machines that they actually brought out. They don't even have them out all the time. They're behind plexiglass. I'm standing there, and they start taking every single item out of my bag and swabbing every single item and every nook and cranny of my bag for explosives. Every electronic that I had to turn it on and show them that it worked. They had no clue what a gimbal was, for the record. I had to explain that to them. I'm not even joking. It was older people. That was fascinating. So then this is the first time I went through. And so on my second bag, I had my carry, I had the 2 carry-ons, like your personal bag and your carry-on bag. So they already went through the first one. Now they're in my electronic bag. They swab it and they stick it in there, and it starts making a different noise. Red lights start flashing. More TSA agents come out, and I'm thinking, because you guys are going to remember, I'm on probation. I'm on probation for 3 years. So I'm like, man, I'm going to prison. Like, there's something in my bag that I didn't know about. Did I, years ago, did I use this bag as maybe like an ammo bag and I didn't know? Yeah. I mean, I'm freaking out over here. Yeah. And, 22 is dirty ammo. So I'm thinking, is there like some of that in there? Maybe I use it at some point to go plinking around. But it come to find out, there was a crumb of a sugar cookie, which will give a false positive on there, and it shut everything down. I mean, literally, guys, it took me about an hour and a half to get through this process. And so then it gets better. We're just getting started. I get through security. I go sit down. I got 30 minutes until we start boarding. In a small airport, they can literally see me from the TSA agents where they're sitting to where I sit down. I mean, there's 2 terminals in this airport. They start boarding. I get up to go get in line. They bring all the machines over there, pull me over, and we did the whole process all over again. Make the whole plane late, get on the plane, have a connecting flight in Charlotte. I get to Charlotte, and this is every time that I fly. They have agents who are waiting on me when I get there, sometimes with dogs. They follow you around the airport the whole time that I'm there. If I go to the bathroom, they go to the bathroom, or they wait. Sometimes they'll wait outside, but usually they'll come in, follow me wherever I go. I can sit down and eat, and they'll sit there and watch me. And then when I go to get on the connecting flight, we do everything all over again. They bring the machines out there. There were 9 TSA agents the last time that I flew waiting on me at my connecting flight to harass me to be able to fly. So I'm saying all this to say, like, this is what the American people are going. This is communism right now. And it's not just me. It's not just all January 6th political prisoners. They're doing this to parents who speak out at school board meetings. They're doing this to pro-life activists. They're doing this to the people who make memes and stuff on social media. We are targeted as conservatives in this country. And it's important for people to understand that.
And it's meant to intimidate you, right? Like, it's all meant. It's not necessarily meant to like do anything. They know they're not going to catch you with anything. They know they're not going to catch 99.999% of the people unless someone makes a mistake, right? And put something in their bag they shouldn't. But it's just to make it so that you don't want to fly anymore. You don't want to do this anymore. You don't want to continue to fight. And that's what they're trying to do. And people like you who are going to continue to do it, are going to put up with it, are a thorn in their side. So, I appreciate everything you're doing. I think you're going to be a great congressman. And, I know you said, maybe 2 years or 2 terms and out. Please stay longer if you go there. I'm mostly for people not staying in a long time, but stay long enough until you start to feel swampy. But if you start to really feel swampy and you feel it's starting to tug, then get out. Because
I've made this commitment. When I leave, I will make sure that I find another America First Patriot representative to replace me. I'm not going to leave it to some swampy person. Look, I live in one of the reddest districts in the country, and this is something I wish that more people spoke about as well. We talk about flipping blue districts red. I think we need to flip the red districts red. And what I mean by that is there's about 70 congressional districts across this country. There's probably 15 to 20 states where it doesn't matter who wins the primary, they're going to win the general election because that district is so red. Well, these are districts that we shouldn't have rhinos in these districts. We shouldn't have Ken Bucks and people
in
like that.
Those primary battles.
Yeah, we should have America First Patriots in those. That's where we should get more people like Matt Gaetz. Imagine if we had 70 Matt Gaetz in the U.S. House right now and 15 to 20 senators like that. We could do that if we put our focus on, we don't care about flipping blue districts red right now. We're going to flip the red districts red, and that's what we need to do.
That's a really good idea. Now, last thing I want to ask you, I just want to touch back on the prison thing real quick because we got to go soon. But a lot of people harp on the fact that our prisons are private entities, right? That they're private, they're for profit. What would you do to solve it? Because my answer is never make something public, right? And that seems to be like where a lot of people lean, make our prison systems work. I don't want the government to touch anything. So for me, how would you fix private prison system? Because obviously there's something wrong with our prison systems. So this might be something you'd have to look into more as a congressman, right? What's going on with our prison systems and the privatization of it. But how would you start to fix it? Because the answer is never public for me.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. And so what I'll say is before I went in, I used to say, man, I think it's really wrong to think that somebody has an invested interest to profit from locking in other individuals up. But when I got in there, speaking to other inmates who had been at private prisons, they were like, man, it's way better. Like, they're so much better ran. They're so much cleaner, so much nicer. I mean, like, the inmates would love a private ran prison over the public prisons in that regard. The biggest issue right now, and the reason that they started doing the private prisons is just the overpopulation. But, man, it's overpopulated not because there's so much crime in America. It's overpopulated because we are literally locking people up over so many victimless crimes. I mean, the amount of people, I mean, literally, guys, I'm in Michigan, right? I'm in a federal prison in Michigan, 6 hours away from home. And I met a guy in there who was in there, no joke, for weed. Now, he had a lot of weed, don't get me wrong, but I didn't know that was still a thing. I didn't know that was still going on. And he came in after me, so this just happened. Oh, wow. But it's legal in Michigan. He could have went to the local dispensary and bought weed and drove home and been fine. But he had a certain amount, and it was actually ghost weed. So ghost dope is what they call. I learned so much in prison, man. So if two or more people testify that, like you two could testify that I sold you, a pound of weed a month for the last year. Well, the feds could turn around and charge me for 12 pounds of weed, even though they never caught me with that. That's called ghost dope and ghost guns. This happens all the time. Really? People are going to prison for that. And the number one thing that that we could do to kind of what I'm getting at in terms of the overpopulation on these victimless crimes, and it's unconstitutional in my opinion. There are so many people in there who maybe they caught a charge when they were 18, 19, 20 years old. Now they're in their 40s, never had any issues, never been in any more trouble. They got pulled over for a broken taillight or something stupid, and they had a gun on them. And now they're in prison. Wasn't like, robbing a bank with a gun or anything like that. There are so many people in there right now who are in there for simple possession of a firearm or ammunition. I met a guy who was in there for they in his car, they had ammo, no gun, ammo, and they charged him a charge for every single bullet that was in that thing, and he ended up having to take a 15-year plea deal for that. And so that is what I'm talking about with this over-policing in our country. Look, you have the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. It doesn't infringe. It doesn't say shall not be infringed unless you've committed a felony. Shall not be infringed unless you're 18. Shall not be infringed unless you're standing on your head doing 10 jumping jacks. It says shall not be infringed. And so I'm a very libertarian when it comes to those things. I believe you want to buy an army tank and you want to drive it down the road and stop at the stoplights and obey the speed limit and go to Walmart and get your groceries, more power to you. I would probably be jealous and ask if you'll give me a ride home.
Sounds pretty cool.
That's amazing. So, and I think that folds right into your judge's comment about getting impeached. Any judge that passes that sentence should automatically be investigated for
100%.
taking money for, having these things. I do believe that corruption happens, and it's unfortunate. But Derrick, thank you so much for coming on. This was fantastic, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me, man. I appreciate it. This has been awesome, and looking forward to keeping in touch with you guys.
100%. So once again, he is Derrick Evans. He is a January 6th political prisoner and a candidate for U.S. Congress. What district are you in West Virginia?
I'm in West Virginia's 1st Congressional District. Anybody can go to my website. It's evansforwv.com, and you can learn more about me there.
And where else can they find you? You're on social media. Is it Evans for WV?
They're all different because I've been deplatformed so many times. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Getter, True Social. I'm mainly active on Twitter and True Social and Facebook are the main places I'm active. But I've been deplatformed so many times now that I don't even know the handles honestly on each one at this point. But I'm active on those three.
Go search Derrick Evans, Derrick Evans, spelled normally, and then you'll find him. He'll pop up there. And once again, go find his book, Political Prisoner, The Untold Story of January 6th. Can that be found everywhere books are sold?
Yep, sure can.
All right. So definitely go do all that. If you like what you heard today, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars, Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth and go find us on the socials. Just go search the Alex Cuesta Show. You'll find us there doing everything. And this was an awesome show. David, do you have anything else to say before we get out of here?
After all the socials, apparently. No,
you're useless.
Yeah, I know. And it was a great show. Great talking to you on hearing all the things that you went through. Honestly, you said like debanking and stuff like that, but really they're like depersoning you at that point because you can't necessarily do anything for that time. So yeah, no, it was a great show. I enjoyed the hell out of it and can't wait to talk more.
And David's going to drive the 250 plus miles to go help you on your campaign, right, Dave?
That's a bit of a drive. I just
made you commit.
It's a bit of a drive. I was a truck driver, though, so I could probably do that.
There you
go. Awesome. So once again, the Alex Cuesta Show. We will be back next week with another awesome show. So long, everybody.